My name is Jessica Morgan. I'm 34 years old, and I work as a pharmaceutical sales representative based in Chicago. 3 months ago, I was arrested at O'Hare International Airport, charged with drug trafficking, accused of attempting to smuggle 20 kilograms of fentanyl across state lines. I'd never even seen fentanyl in my life. I don't use drugs. I don't know anyone who sells drugs. I was traveling for a work conference, same as I'd done dozens of times before. But none of that mattered when the police surrounded the taxi I was sitting in. When they pulled my luggage from the trunk and found packages of narcotics hidden inside. When they handcuffed me right there in the departures lane while hundreds of travelers watched. For 3 months, I fought to prove my innocence, to figure out how 20 kilograms of drugs ended up in my suitcase, to understand why my taxi driver had locked the doors and told me not to get out. And when I finally discovered the truth, when I learned who had set me up and why, it was worse than I ever could have imagined. But before I tell you what really happened that day at the airport, before I explain how I ended up framed for a crime I didn't commit, I need you to do something for me. Hit that like button right now. Subscribe to this channel. Drop a comment below telling me your name and where you're watching from. Because what I'm about to tell you isn't just my story. This could happen to anyone. Any business trip, any taxi ride, any moment when you're not paying attention. This is about how easy it is to destroy someone's life. How quickly you can go from innocent traveler to accused criminal. How the system assumes you're guilty until you prove otherwise. Let me take you back to the beginning, back to March 20th, 3 days before my life fell apart. I'd been working at MedTech Solutions for 6 years, started as an entry-level sales associate right out of college, worked my way up to senior account representative. Good salary, great benefits, company car. I was making $85,000 a year, plus bonuses and commissions. More importantly, I was good at my job, really good. My territory covered the Midwest, hospitals and clinics from Ohio to Colorado. I had relationships with procurement directors, pharmacy managers, physicians. People trusted me, liked working with me. That's why when MedTech announced they were creating a new position, senior account manager for the entire Western region, I knew I had a shot. The position came with a significant promotion, base salary of $185,000 plus performance bonuses, company expense account, first-class travel, a real career leap. There were only 2 internal candidates being seriously considered, me and Brandon Chen. Brandon had started at MedTech around the same time I had. We'd gone through training together, attended the same conferences, competed for some of the same accounts over the years. But we were very different people. I'd built my career through relationship building and consistent performance. Brandon had built his through connections and aggressive tactics. His uncle, Richard Chen, sat on MedTech's board of directors. Family money, old money. Brandon had grown up in Pacific Palisades, gone to private schools, graduated from USC. He'd been handed opportunities his entire life. And he expected this promotion to be another thing handed to him. Except it wasn't going to be. Because my numbers were better, my client retention was better, my reputation within the company was better. Everyone knew I was going to get the promotion, including Brandon. And that's when things started getting uncomfortable. It started subtly in January, Brandon making comments in meetings, little digs about my presentation style, my client management approach. Nothing overt enough to complain about, but enough to be annoying. Then, in February, I noticed he'd been contacting some of my key clients, trying to poach them, undermining relationships I'd spent years building. I mentioned it to our manager, Susan. She said she'd talk to him. Whatever she said didn't help. If anything, Brandon got worse, more aggressive, more hostile. In early March, we were both at the national sales meeting in Dallas. During a group dinner, Brandon had too much to drink, started making comments about how the promotion should go to someone with real connections instead of someone who got lucky with a few big accounts. "You know you don't deserve this, right?" he'd said to me at one point, his voice loud enough that other colleagues turned to look. "You're only being considered because of diversity quotas. They need a woman in leadership." I'd walked away before I said something I'd regret. But I'd also noticed the desperation in his voice, the anger. Something about Brandon had changed. He wasn't just competitive anymore, he was desperate. I should have recognized that desperation as dangerous, should have understood what someone might do when they're backed into a corner. But I didn't. I just thought he was being an entitled asshole who couldn't handle losing. The National Pharmaceutical Sales Conference in Los Angeles was scheduled for March 20th through 22nd. It's the biggest industry event of the year. Vendors, manufacturers, sales reps, executives, everyone attends. MedTech always sent a contingent. This year, it was 12 of us, including Brandon and me. We were both scheduled to give presentations. I was speaking about relationship-based selling strategies. Brandon was speaking about leveraging technology in pharmaceutical sales. I flew out of O'Hare on March 19th, landed at LAX around 8 p.m. Pacific time, took a shuttle to the Hilton LAX, where most of the conference attendees were staying. I checked in around 9 p.m., room 642, standard business hotel room. 2 double beds, desk, bathroom, small sitting area. Nothing special, but comfortable enough. I unpacked my suitcase that night, hung up my blazers and dress pants for the conference, set out my presentation materials, made sure I had everything I needed for the next 3 days. My black roller bag suitcase sat in the closet, mostly empty except for dirty clothes I'd accumulate during the trip. That suitcase, the one that would destroy my life 3 days later. I remember noticing how normal everything felt, how routine. I'd done this same process dozens of times. Pack, fly, attend conference, present, network, fly home. I had no idea this would be my last normal night for months. Day 1 of the conference went well. I attended morning sessions on FDA regulatory changes and new drug approval processes, networked during lunch, gave my presentation in the afternoon to about 150 people. It went great. Good questions, positive feedback, several people asking for my contact information afterward. I felt confident, professional, in my element. I saw Brandon at the conference, but we didn't interact much. He gave his presentation in a different track. I heard later it was fine, but not particularly well received. Too technical, not enough practical application. That evening, MedTech hosted a dinner for our team at a restaurant near the hotel. 12 of us, plus our regional VP who'd flown in from New York. Brandon was quiet during dinner, barely participating in conversation, drinking more than usual. At one point, I noticed him staring at his phone with an expression I couldn't quite read. Anxiety? Fear? Anger? "Everything okay?" our VP asked him. "Fine," Brandon said quickly, putting his phone away. "Just dealing with some personal stuff." I didn't think much of it at the time, didn't know that personal stuff meant gambling debts he couldn't pay, loan sharks threatening him, desperation reaching a breaking point. After dinner, we all went back to the hotel. I worked on my laptop for an hour, preparing notes for the next day's sessions. Then I showered and went to bed around 11 p.m. I never heard anyone enter my room that night, never heard the door open, never knew that while I slept, someone was accessing my room and tampering with my luggage. Day 2 of the conference was busier. More sessions, more networking, a vendor expo in the afternoon where I walked around talking to pharmaceutical manufacturers and equipment suppliers. I had lunch with a potential new client, a hospital procurement director from Phoenix who was interested in switching to MedTech's product line. It was a good meeting. He basically committed to a contract worth about $300,000 annually. That contract would have put me significantly ahead of Brandon in the internal rankings, would have virtually guaranteed I'd get the promotion. I texted Susan, our manager, about it that afternoon. She responded with celebration emojis and, "This is huge, great work." Later, I found out Brandon had somehow intercepted that text. He'd hacked into the company email system, was monitoring my communications with management. Desperate to understand why he was losing. When he saw that text, saw that contract, he must have known it was over, that he'd lost. And that's when he made his final, desperate move. That evening, there was a big reception. Open bar, appetizers, jazz band. Networking event for all conference attendees. I went for about an hour, talked to colleagues, exchanged business cards, made small talk. But I was tired. Too many people, too much noise, too much small talk. I went back to my room around 8:30, changed into comfortable clothes, ordered room service, ate while watching TV and finishing up some work emails. Around 10 p.m., there was a knock on my door. "Housekeeping," a woman's voice called. I opened the door. A hotel maid stood there with fresh towels. "Oh, I didn't request towels," I said. "Complimentary," she said with a smile. "For conference guests. Extra towels, extra toiletries." "That's nice, thank you." She brought in the towels, set them in the bathroom, glanced around the room. "You need anything else? Ice? Water?" "No, I'm fine, but thank you." She left. I closed the door, locked it, put on the security latch, went back to watching TV. I never suspected anything. Why would I? She was a hotel maid, in a uniform, with a name tag that said Maria, perfectly normal. But later, I'd learned that was the moment. That was when Maria Gonzalez accessed my suitcase. That was when she planted 6 packages of fentanyl in the bottom compartment, hidden under the liner where I'd never noticed them. 20 kilograms, street value of approximately $2 million. And I was completely oblivious, sitting 5 feet away, watching a rerun of Friends while someone destroyed my life. Day 3, my last day at the conference, started normal. I woke up at 6:30, showered, got dressed in business casual, packed up most of my belongings since I'd be checking out early the next morning. I repacked my suitcase around 8 a.m., folded my clothes, added my toiletries, zipped it up. The suitcase felt normal, maybe a tiny bit heavier than when I'd arrived, but not noticeably so, not enough to make me suspicious. I spent the day at final conference sessions, attended a keynote by a pharmaceutical industry executive, had lunch with colleagues, said goodbye to people I'd see again at next year's conference. That evening, our MedTech team had a farewell dinner, all 12 of us at a steakhouse in Manhattan Beach. Brandon showed up late, looked terrible, dark circles under his eyes, unshaven, kept checking his phone compulsively. "You okay, man?" one of the other reps asked him. "I'm fine," Brandon snapped. "Why does everyone keep asking me that?" He barely ate, left early, said he wasn't feeling well. I watched him leave and felt a flicker of something, not quite pity, more like recognition that he was unraveling, that the pressure of losing the promotion was getting to him. But I didn't feel bad about it. He'd been hostile to me for months, had tried to undermine my work, had made offensive comments about me only being considered for diversity reasons. If he was stressed about losing, that was his problem. He should have just been better at his job. I had no idea that he'd already set his plan in motion, that in less than 12 hours I'd be under arrest, that his solution to losing the promotion wasn't to accept defeat gracefully, but to destroy me completely. I went to bed early that night, set my alarm for 5 a.m. My flight was at 8:30, and I wanted plenty of time to get through security. I slept well, dreamlessly, the sleep of someone who has no idea their life is about to end. My alarm went off at 5. I got up, got ready, did a final check of the room to make sure I hadn't forgotten anything, added my laptop and phone charger to my carry-on bag. I lifted my suitcase off the luggage rack. It felt maybe a little heavier than I remembered, but I'd accumulated conference materials, a few free samples from vendors, nothing alarming. I wheeled it to the door, took one last look around the room, then headed downstairs to check out. The lobby was quiet at 5:40 a.m., just a few other early travelers. I checked out at the desk. The woman asked if I'd enjoyed my stay. "Yes, it was great, thank you. Would you like me to call you a taxi?" "Yes, please. I'm going to LAX. Of course, it'll be about 10 minutes. I stood outside the hotel with my luggage, watching the dark sky start to lighten. The air was cool and slightly humid. Los Angeles morning. A yellow taxi pulled up at 5:55 exactly. The driver got out. Hispanic, maybe 40, friendly smile. Airport? He asked. Yes, LAX, Terminal 3, United. He loaded my suitcase into the trunk. I noticed he paused slightly when he lifted it, like he was surprised by the weight. But then he closed the trunk and got in the driver's seat. I climbed in the back with my laptop bag. And that was it, the moment of no return. Once that trunk closed, once we started driving, there was no way to stop what was about to happen. The drive started normally, small talk about the weather, the traffic, how I'd enjoyed Los Angeles. You here for business or pleasure? The driver asked. His name, according to the taxi license displayed on the dashboard, was Carlos Ruiz. Business, pharmaceutical sales conference. Ah, okay. You're a doctor? No, I'm in sales. I sell medical equipment and pharmaceuticals to hospitals. Must be interesting work. It can be. Lots of travel. You travel a lot for work? Yeah, probably once or twice a month. So you're used to airports, security, all that. Unfortunately, yes. He nodded, drove in silence for a few minutes, then asked, You pack your own bag? It was such a strange question, so specific, but I answered without thinking much about it. Of course. Why? No reason, just making conversation. But his hands had tightened slightly on the steering wheel. He kept glancing at the rearview mirror, not at me, at the trunk, like he was thinking about what was inside. I went back to scrolling through my phone, checking emails, reading news, not paying attention to the driver's increasing nervousness. Traffic was heavy on the 405, as always. Stop and go. Carlos navigated it skillfully, weaving between lanes when possible, patient when it wasn't. He kept checking his phone. It was mounted on the dashboard. I could see notifications popping up, text messages. But he didn't read them while driving. Busy morning, I commented. What? Your phone, lots of messages. Oh, yeah, my wife. She worries when I work early mornings. But his voice was tight, strained. That wasn't his wife texting him. Later I'd learn those texts were from Brandon. Instructions, updates, making sure Carlos was following the plan exactly. Pick her up at 5:55, drive to airport. At 6:35, call the tip line. Keep her in the car until police arrive. You'll be paid the second half when it's done. Carlos was receiving step-by-step instructions on how to destroy my life, and I was sitting 3 feet away, completely unaware. We exited the freeway around 6:30, followed signs toward LAX. The airport was already busy, cars everywhere, travelers with luggage, shuttle buses, the usual chaos. Carlos took the exit for Terminal 3, started following the signs for departures. That's when his behavior changed dramatically. He got very quiet, stopped making small talk. His eyes kept darting between the road and his mirrors. His jaw was clenched. Everything okay? I asked. Fine, he said shortly. We approached the departures drop-off area, long line of cars inching forward, travelers everywhere, TSA agents monitoring the curb, police cars stationed at intervals. Carlos slowed down, like he was going to pull to the curb and let me out, but then he didn't. He drove past the drop-off. You just passed it, I said. I know, just 1 second. He circled around, came back toward Terminal 3, slowed down again near the curb, and then I heard it. The unmistakable click of all 4 door locks engaging. My heart skipped a beat. What are you doing? I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. Don't get out here, Carlos said. His voice was tense, almost pleading. Please, just trust me. In 5 minutes, you'll understand why. What are you talking about? Unlock the doors. I need to catch my flight. I can't. Not yet. Something is wrong. Just wait. I reached for the door handle, pulled it. Nothing. Child locks engaged. Panic started rising in my chest. Every news story I'd ever read about women being kidnapped by taxi drivers flashed through my mind. "Let me out right now or I'm calling 911, I said, my voice shaking. "Call them," Carlos said. "It's fine. They're coming anyway." "What?" My blood went cold. "What do you mean they're coming?" But before he could answer, I saw them. 3 police cars, unmarked sedans with lights. They came from different directions, converging on our taxi. They surrounded us, boxed us in. 6 officers got out with their hands on their holsters. Carlos put the car in park, put both hands on the steering wheel where they could clearly see them. "What did you do?" I whispered. My whole body was shaking. "What's happening?" "It's not what I did," Carlos said quietly. His face had gone pale. "It's what's in your luggage." And in that moment, I understood, fully understood. This wasn't a kidnapping. This was something worse. I'd been set up. The next 30 minutes were a blur of terror and disbelief. Officers approaching the car, orders to step out, hands visible, move slowly. Carlos getting out first, hands raised. "I'm the one who called. I'm cooperating." Me getting out on shaking legs. "I don't understand what's happening. What's going on?" A female officer approaching me, mid-40s, professional. "Ma'am, we received information that you may be transporting illegal narcotics. We need to search your luggage." "What? No, there's nothing. I'm just going home from a work conference. This is insane." "Then you have nothing to worry about," the officer said. But I had everything to worry about, because Carlos had just told me there was something in my luggage, something bad enough that he'd called the police. 2 officers opened the trunk, pulled out my black roller bag, set it on the ground behind the taxi. "Is this your bag?" one asked. "Yes, but—" "Did you pack it yourself?" "Yes, 3 days ago in Chicago, and then I repacked it yesterday at the hotel." "Has anyone else had access to it?" "No, it's been in my hotel room the entire time." The officers exchanged glances. One pulled on latex gloves, unzipped the suitcase. A small crowd had started forming, travelers stopping to watch, wondering what was happening, taking out their phones to record. I felt humiliated, exposed, standing there while police searched my luggage in front of hundreds of strangers. The officers started removing items, my clothes, my toiletries, my conference materials, everything I'd packed, now spread out on the dirty curb. And then his hand stopped. He pulled out something I'd never seen before, brown paper wrapping, taped securely, about the size of a brick. He pulled out another, and another, and another. 6 packages total, hidden in the bottom of my suitcase underneath the liner, exactly where I'd never look. "Those aren't mine," I said immediately. My voice sounded distant, like it was coming from someone else. "I've never seen those before. I didn't pack those. Someone else must have put them there." The officer didn't respond. He used a knife to carefully slice open one of the packages. Inside was a clear plastic bag filled with white powder. "We'll need to test this," he said to his partner. "But based on appearance and quantity, I'd estimate this is fentanyl, 20 kilograms, give or take." 20 kilograms. The number hit me like a physical blow. That wasn't personal use. That wasn't even small-time dealing. That was distribution level, federal charges, mandatory minimum sentencing. "This is a mistake," I said desperately. "I'm a pharmaceutical sales rep. I work for MedTech Solutions. I was here for a conference at the Hilton. You can check. This is all a mistake. Those drugs aren't mine. Someone planted them." "Ma'am, you're under arrest for possession with intent to distribute controlled substances." The female officer pulled out handcuffs. "You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." I barely heard the rest. The Miranda rights washed over me like white noise, because all I could focus on was the cold metal clicking around my wrists, the feeling of being handcuffed in public, of being treated like a criminal. Travelers were definitely recording now. I'd see the videos later posted on social media. Drug bust at LAX. Woman arrested with fentanyl. My face clearly visible. My humiliation preserved forever online. They put me in the back of a police car. Through the window, I watched them photograph my suitcase, photograph the packages, document everything with careful precision. Carlos was talking to officers, gesturing, explaining something. He looked nervous, guilty. After about 20 minutes, I saw them let him go, shake his hand. One officer even patted him on the back like he'd done a good job. He'd done a very good job. He'd delivered me exactly where he was supposed to, kept me contained until police arrived, played his part perfectly, and now he was free to go. While I sat in handcuffs in the back of a police car, my entire life disintegrating around me. They took me to a DEA field office near the airport, not a police station, the Drug Enforcement Administration, because 20 kilograms of fentanyl is federal jurisdiction. They processed me like I was already convicted. Fingerprints, photographs, personal property confiscated. My phone, my wallet, my laptop, everything. Then they put me in an interview room and left me there for 2 hours. I sat at a metal table in a cold room under fluorescent lights, still handcuffed, trying to process what had happened. Someone had planted drugs in my luggage. Someone had set me up. Someone had paid Carlos to deliver me to the police. But who and why? I kept running through possibilities. A mistake? Wrong luggage? But no, those drugs were in my suitcase. The one with my name tag. The one with my clothes. A random criminal using me as an unwitting mule? But that didn't make sense either. If you're smuggling drugs, you don't pack them in someone's luggage and then have them arrested before boarding. That defeats the purpose. This was intentional, targeted. Someone wanted me arrested specifically. But who would do that? Who would go to such lengths? Finally, 2 DEA agents entered the room, a man and a woman, both in their 40s, both with expressions that said they'd seen this 1,000 times before. "I'm Agent Rodriguez," the man said. "This is Agent Kim. We need to ask you some questions about the narcotics found in your possession." "They weren't in my possession," I said immediately. "Someone planted them. I didn't know they were there." "So you're saying someone else put 20 kilograms of fentanyl in your suitcase without you knowing?" "Yes." "Who?" "I don't know, but I didn't put them there. I'm a pharmaceutical sales rep. I work for a legitimate company. I was traveling for a work conference. This is all a huge mistake." Agent Kim pulled out a notepad. "Let's start from the beginning. Where did you get the suitcase?" "I've had it for 3 years. I bought it at Target." "Where have you been for the past week?" "Chicago, where I live. Then I flew to Los Angeles on March 19th for a pharmaceutical sales conference." "Where did you stay?" "The Hilton LAX, room 642. "And your luggage was with you the entire time?" "Yes, in my hotel room." "Locked in your room?" "Well, yes. I mean, housekeeping came in once or twice to clean, but..." "So housekeeping had access to your room and your luggage?" "I guess, technically. But hotel housekeeping doesn't plant drugs in guests' luggage. That's insane." The agents exchanged glances. "Ms. Morgan," Agent Rodriguez said carefully, "do you know how much 20 kilograms of fentanyl is worth?" "No." "Street value is approximately $2 million. Wholesale value is maybe half that. We're talking about a very significant amount of narcotics. Which is exactly why it makes no sense that I'd try to smuggle it in my checked luggage. If I were a drug trafficker, which I'm not, I'd be smarter than that." "Unless you were arrogant," Agent Kim said. "Unless you thought you'd never get caught. Lots of criminals get caught because they're overconfident." "I'm not a criminal," my voice rose. "I work in pharmaceutical sales. I have a good job. I make $85,000 a year. Why would I risk all that to smuggle drugs?" "Maybe you needed money," Agent Rodriguez suggested. "Medical bills? Debt? Expensive habits?" "No, I have student loans like everyone else, but they're manageable. I'm not in debt. I don't gamble. I barely even drink. There's no reason for me to smuggle drugs." "Then explain how they got in your luggage." "I can't, but I know I didn't put them there." They asked me the same questions over and over for 3 more hours, circling back to the same points, trying to trip me up, waiting for me to contradict myself. "Where were you on the evening of March 20th? Who did you see? What time did you pack your luggage? Did anyone enter your room? Are you sure? Are you absolutely sure?" I answered everything honestly, consistently, because I had nothing to hide. But I could see in their eyes that they didn't believe me. 20 kilograms of fentanyl doesn't magically appear in someone's suitcase. Someone put it there, and I was the person who'd been traveling with that suitcase. Guilty until proven innocent. That's how the system works when you're accused of drug trafficking. Around 8 p.m., they finally let me make a phone call. I'd been in custody for almost 12 hours. I called my sister Amy. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely dial. "Jess, why are you calling from a weird number? Aren't you supposed to be flying home right now?" "Amy, I need you to listen very carefully. Don't interrupt, just listen. I've been arrested." Silence on the other end. "I was arrested at LAX this morning. They're saying I was smuggling drugs, fentanyl, 20 kilograms of it. But I didn't do it, Amy. I swear to God I didn't do it. Someone planted it in my luggage. I've been set up." "Jesus Christ," Amy's voice was barely a whisper. "Jess, what? I don't understand. What's happening?" "I need a lawyer, the best criminal defense lawyer you can find. I need them immediately. And I need you to call Mom and Dad. Tell them what happened. Tell them I'm innocent. Tell them—" "Where are they taking you?" "I don't know. They said something about federal detention, metropolitan something." "Oh my God, Jess, federal charges? That's really bad." "I know. That's why I need the best lawyer possible. Can you find someone? Can you call around?" Yes, of course. I'll start making calls right now. I'll call Mom and Dad. We'll figure this out. Jess, are you okay? Are you safe?" I almost laughed. Safe? I was under arrest for drug trafficking. I was facing potentially 20 years in federal prison for a crime I didn't commit. Nothing about this was safe. "I'm fine," I lied. "Just get me a lawyer, please." "I will, I promise. I love you. I love you too." They took the phone away before I could say anything else. They transferred me to Metropolitan Detention Center around 11 p.m., booked me officially, gave me orange scrubs to change into, took my street clothes, my jewelry, everything personal. I was now inmate number FN 44287, not Jessica Morgan, not a person with a career and a family and a life, just a number in an orange jumpsuit. They put me in a holding cell with 6 other women, all awaiting processing or court appearances or transfers, all in orange, all looking as exhausted and defeated as I felt. I found a space on a concrete bench against the wall and sat down, put my head in my hands, tried not to cry. "First time?" a voice asked. I looked up. The woman next to me was maybe mid-30s, blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail, tattoos covering both arms. "Is it that obvious?" "Yeah, you got that 'I can't believe this is happening to me' look. Believe me, honey, we all had it once." "I didn't do what they're saying I did." She smiled sadly. "That's what we all say too." "No, I mean it. I really didn't. I was framed. Someone planted drugs in my luggage without me knowing." "Okay." Her tone suggested she didn't believe me, but also didn't care. "What'd they get you for?" "Drug trafficking. Fentanyl." Her eyebrows went up. "Damn, how much?" 20 kilos. She whistled low. "That's federal. That's serious time if you're convicted." "I'm not going to be convicted because I didn't do it." "Hope you got a good lawyer then." "My family's getting me one." "Then maybe you got a shot. Most people in here, they're screwed. Public defenders who don't give a shit. System that's rigged against them. But if you got money for a real lawyer, maybe you'll be okay." I didn't feel okay. I felt like I was drowning, like my entire life had been upended in the span of a single morning, and I couldn't figure out how to right myself. "I'm supposed to be at work on Monday," I said quietly, more to myself than to her. "I'm supposed to be presenting our quarterly numbers at a team meeting. My life is supposed to be completely different than this." "Life's funny like that," the woman said. "Changes fast. One day you're living normal, next day you're in jail. Happens to all of us eventually, I guess." I didn't want to believe that. Didn't want to accept that this was just something that happened. Random bad luck, wrong place, wrong time. Because it wasn't random. Someone had done this to me. Deliberately. Specifically. I just needed to figure out who and why. I didn't sleep that night. Couldn't. The holding cell was cold and loud. Women crying, arguing, some probably withdrawing from drugs. Guards walking by every hour. Fluorescent lights that never fully turned off. I sat on that bench all night, replaying every moment of the past 3 days, trying to figure out when someone could have accessed my luggage. The hotel room. That was the only place. When housekeeping came in, or maybe when I was at conference sessions. But who would have done it? And how would they have known which room I was in? Unless someone told them. Someone who knew I'd be at that conference, knew which hotel I was staying at, knew my room number. Someone from work. And suddenly it clicked. All of it. Brandon. Brandon knew I was going to LA, knew which hotel, knew my schedule. He'd been at the same conference, same hotel, had access to all the same information I did. And he was desperate. Desperate enough to make offensive comments about me. Desperate enough to try to poach my clients. Desperate enough to, what? Frame me for drug trafficking? That seemed extreme, seemed impossible. But the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. With me out of the picture, with me arrested and fired and destroyed, the promotion would default to him. He'd get the salary increase, the bonuses, the opportunity to dig himself out of whatever hole he'd fallen into. All he had to do was destroy me first. My arraignment was scheduled for 2 days later, March 25th. I spent those 2 days in a jail cell, wearing orange scrubs, eating terrible food, and trying not to have a complete breakdown. Amy came to visit me once. We sat separated by plexiglass, talking through phones like in movies. "We hired you a lawyer," she said immediately. "Marcus Rivera. He used to be a federal prosecutor. Now he does defense work. Very expensive, but Mom and Dad are covering it. They're using their retirement savings." Oh, God. Guilt washed over me. I can't let them do that. They want to. They know you're innocent. We all do. Marcus is good, Jess. He's already been reviewing your case. He thinks there's reasonable doubt. "Did you tell my work?" Amy's face fell. "Yeah, I called Susan on Monday morning, told her what happened." "What did she say?" She said they'd have to put you on unpaid leave pending the outcome of the case. Company policy for employees arrested on felony charges. So I'm fired. "You're on leave. It's different." "Amy, I've been arrested for drug trafficking. Even if I'm acquitted, my career is over. No pharmaceutical company is going to hire someone who was accused of smuggling fentanyl." "Don't think like that. First we prove you're innocent. Then we worry about your career." But I knew the truth. My career was already over. Even sitting here 2 days after the arrest, Google searches for my name were already showing news articles. Chicago woman arrested at LAX with 20 kilograms of fentanyl. My LinkedIn profile was probably being viewed by everyone in the industry. By the time this was resolved, even if I was exonerated, the damage would be permanent. The arraignment was exactly as terrible as I'd imagined. I shuffled into the courtroom in shackles, wearing orange scrubs, feeling everyone's eyes on me. Marcus Rivera was already there. Tall, maybe 50 years old, expensive suit, confident demeanor. He looked like someone who knew how to win. He gave me a small nod of encouragement as I sat down next to him. The judge entered. We all stood. The proceeding began. The prosecutor, a stern woman in her 40s, laid out the charges. Possession with intent to distribute fentanyl, transportation of controlled substances across state lines, conspiracy to traffic narcotics. She described the arrest, the traffic stop at LAX, the 20 kilograms found in my luggage, the street value of approximately $2 million, my alleged attempt to board a flight and transport the drugs to Chicago. She made me sound like a drug kingpin, a sophisticated criminal, someone running a distribution network across multiple states. Marcus stood when it was his turn. "Your Honor, my client maintains her complete innocence. Ms. Morgan is a respected pharmaceutical sales representative with no prior criminal record. She was traveling for a work conference and had no knowledge of any narcotics in her luggage. We believe she was deliberately targeted and framed by an unknown party. We request bail be set at a reasonable amount so Ms. Morgan can assist in her own defense from outside detention. The prosecutor objected immediately. Your Honor, given the quantity of narcotics involved, we believe Ms. Morgan is a flight risk and a danger to the community. This was not personal use. This was a distribution-level amount. We request she be held without bail. The judge looked at me over his reading glasses, studied me like I was a specimen under a microscope. Ms. Morgan, do you have ties to the community? Marcus answered for me. Yes, Your Honor. She's lived in Chicago her entire life. Her family is there. She's been employed at the same company for 6 years. She has no history of violence, no prior arrests, no indication she would flee. She also had 20 kilograms of fentanyl in her luggage, the judge said dryly. That suggests connections to a criminal organization with significant resources that could help her disappear if released. She didn't know the drugs were there, Your Honor, Marcus insisted. That's for a jury to decide. The judge made a notation on his paperwork. Given the quantity of controlled substances, the potential mandatory minimum sentence of 10 to 20 years if convicted, and the suggestion of organizational ties, I'm denying bail. Ms. Morgan will remain in federal custody pending trial. The gavel came down. Just like that, my fate was sealed. I wouldn't be going home. Wouldn't be sleeping in my own bed. Wouldn't be free until this was resolved, however long that took. They transferred me back to MDC, put me in a cell with 3 other women this time, a more permanent arrangement since I'd be there for a while. My cellmates were a mixed group. Carmen, 45, in for tax evasion, Shanice, 28, drug possession, and Yolanda, 52, some kind of white-collar fraud. They were all awaiting trial too, all stuck in this limbo of being accused but not yet convicted. What are you in for? Carmen asked that first night. Drug trafficking, but I didn't do it. Girl, we all didn't do it, Shanice said with a laugh. That's like rule number 1 in here. Nobody actually did what they're accused of. No, I really didn't. Someone planted drugs in my luggage. Okay. Shanice's tone said she'd heard this 1,000 times. So who planted them? I think it was a co-worker, someone who wanted me out of the way. That got their attention. Yolanda sat up on her bunk. For real? Like corporate espionage shit? Sort of. We were competing for a promotion. I was going to get it, and I think he framed me so I'd be arrested, and he'd get it instead. Damn, Carmen said. That's cold. That's like movie-level cold. That's what I'm dealing with. Well, Yolanda said, if that's true, your lawyer should be able to prove it pretty easy. Follow the money, right? Someone paid to set you up. Find who paid, find who did it. She made it sound so simple, but I knew it wouldn't be. Marcus came to visit me 3 days later. We met in a private attorney consultation room. Finally, I could talk to someone without guards listening in. Okay, Marcus said, spreading files across the table. Let's talk about your defense strategy. First, tell me everything about this coworker you think set you up. Brandon Chen, right? Yes. We've been competing for a promotion for months. He's been increasingly hostile, made comments about me, tried to undermine my work. That's motive, but we need more. We need evidence. Do you know if he has any connection to drug trafficking? I have no idea. I barely know him outside of work. What do you know about him? He comes from money. His uncle is on our company's board. He went to USC. He's always lived in California. He's around my age. That's really all I know. Okay, I'm going to run a full background check. Financial records, travel records, everything. If he's involved in this, there'll be a trail. What about the taxi driver, Carlos? He knew. He called the police before we even got to the airport. He's part of this. I'm investigating him too. Carlos Ruiz, 42 years old, been driving a taxi for 16 years, no criminal record. On the surface, he looks clean. Then how did he know to call? That's what we need to figure out. Someone paid him or threatened him or both. We find that connection, we find your proof. What about the hotel maid, the one who planted the drugs? Maria Gonzalez. We're investigating her too. I've got a private investigator tracking her financial records, phone records, everything. If someone paid her, we'll find it. How long will all this take? Marcus hesitated. Investigations like this, they take time. Weeks, maybe months. The DEA is doing their own investigation too, trying to figure out where the drugs came from. If we can prove they came from an external source, that helps your case. Months? I have to stay here for months? Possibly, unless we can get the charges dismissed earlier. But realistically, Jess, you need to prepare for a long fight. A long fight. Months in a jail cell. Months of orange scrubs and terrible food and sleeping on a concrete bunk. Months of missing my life. All because Brandon Chen wanted a promotion. The first break came 2 weeks later. Marcus's private investigator found something. Maria Gonzalez, the housekeeper, had recently deposited $15,000 into her bank account. Cash. No explanation for the source. That's our connection, Marcus told me during his next visit. His eyes were bright with excitement. Someone paid her. We just need to prove who. Can you trace the money? It's cash, so it's harder, but my investigator is working on it. He's going through her phone records, looking at who she was in contact with around the time of the deposit. We'll find something. Hope flickered in my chest. Real hope, not just desperate, wishful thinking. What about Brandon? Did you find anything on him? Marcus's expression grew more serious. Yes, Brandon Chen has significant gambling debts, over $200,000 owed to various casinos and private lenders. My eyes widened. $200,000? He's been borrowing from family to cover it, but there's only so much they'll give him. He's desperate, Jess, really desperate. The kind of desperate that makes people do extreme things. Like frame someone for drug trafficking. Exactly. So what now? Can you arrest him? Not yet. We need direct evidence connecting him to Maria or to Carlos. We need proof he paid them. We need documentation, communications, something concrete. Right now, it's all circumstantial. But we're getting closer? We're definitely getting closer. 3 days later, the DEA arrested Maria Gonzalez, charged her with conspiracy to traffic narcotics and evidence tampering. Under interrogation, she confessed, said a man had approached her 3 weeks before my stay at the Hilton, offered her $20,000 to plant packages in a specific guest's luggage, a guest who would be checking in for the pharmaceutical conference, room 642, Jessica Morgan. Did she identify who paid her? I asked Marcus urgently when he told me. She gave a description: Hispanic male, mid-30s, well-dressed, spoke English with no accent, but she didn't get a name. He paid her $10,000 up front, $10,000 after the job was done. It has to be Brandon. The timing lines up. He was in LA. He knew which room I was in. The description doesn't match Brandon. He's Asian, not Hispanic. My stomach sank. Then who? Someone Brandon hired. Someone to be the go-between so he couldn't be directly connected. Can Maria identify him from photos? We're working on it. But Jess, this is good. This proves you didn't know about the drugs. Proves someone else planted them. The prosecution's case just got a lot weaker. But I'm still here. I'm still in jail. I'm filing a motion to dismiss. Given this new evidence, I think there's a good chance the judge will throw out the charges. When? Hearing is scheduled for next week. 1 more week. I could do 1 more week. I'd already done almost a month. What was 7 more days? The hearing happened on April 15th, exactly 3 weeks after my arrest. Marcus presented the evidence: Maria's confession, the cash payment, the proof that someone else had planted the drugs without my knowledge. The prosecutor pushed back hard, argued that Maria's confession didn't prove I wasn't involved, that maybe I'd hired Maria myself to transport the drugs, that the whole "I was framed" story could be a cover. Your Honor, Marcus argued, Ms. Morgan had no motive to smuggle drugs. She has a successful career, no prior criminal history, no financial difficulties. Why would she risk everything to transport narcotics? The more logical explanation is that someone targeted her specifically to remove her from a professional competition. Do you have evidence of this competition? The judge asked. Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Morgan was competing with another employee for a significant promotion. That employee, Brandon Chen, has substantial gambling debts and would benefit financially from Ms. Morgan being removed from consideration. The judge looked intrigued. Do you have evidence connecting Mr. Chen to the crime? We're still investigating, but the circumstantial evidence is compelling. The prosecutor stood. Your Honor, circumstantial evidence isn't enough to dismiss federal charges. There are still 20 kilograms of fentanyl that were found in Ms. Morgan's possession. That's not in dispute. The judge was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, I'm not prepared to dismiss the charges entirely. However, given the new evidence suggesting Ms. Morgan may not have knowingly possessed the narcotics, I'm willing to release her on bail pending further investigation. Relief flooded through me. Not dismissed, but released. I could go home. Bail is set at $500,000. Ms. Morgan will be required to surrender her passport, submit to regular check-ins with a probation officer, and remain within the state of Illinois pending trial. Marcus stood. Thank you, Your Honor. $500,000. My family didn't have that kind of money, but they could probably get a bail bondsman to cover it for a 10% fee. $50,000. My parents would have to drain everything, but I'd be free. It took 2 days to process the paperwork and arrange the bond. 2 more days in that cell, so close to release, but not quite there yet. Finally, on April 17th, they brought me to processing, gave me back my clothes, my personal items, handed me a manila envelope with my phone, wallet, and keys. Amy was waiting in the lobby. When she saw me, she burst into tears and hugged me so hard I could barely breathe. Oh my God, Jess, I'm so glad you're okay. I'm okay, I said, even though I wasn't. Not really. But I was out. That was something. We drove back to Chicago together. 4 hours in Amy's car, windows down, music playing, feeling the sun on my face for the first time in weeks. It should have felt like freedom, but all I felt was exhausted. Mom and Dad want you to stay with them, Amy said about halfway through the drive. They set up your old bedroom. What about my apartment? It's still there, but just, there were reporters, news crews. They've been camped outside your building for weeks. Mom doesn't think you should go back there yet. Reporters, of course. Woman arrested with 20 kilograms of fentanyl was a story, especially when that woman worked in pharmaceutical sales. The irony was too good for media to pass up. Okay, I said quietly. Mom and Dad's is fine. When we pulled up to my parents' house in Naperville, they were waiting on the front porch. My mom ran down the steps before I'd even gotten out of the car. She hugged me and cried. My dad stood behind her with tears in his eyes, too. We knew you didn't do it, my mom kept saying. We knew. We never doubted you for a second. Inside, the house looked exactly the same as it had when I'd last visited for Christmas. Familiar and safe. My old bedroom had been prepared. Fresh sheets, flowers on the dresser, my favorite snacks on the nightstand. You rest, my mom said. We'll talk later. Just rest. I lay down on the bed I'd slept in from age 10 to 18, stared at the ceiling, and finally, I let myself cry. Not the careful, quiet crying I'd done in jail where I couldn't show weakness. Real crying, sobbing, releasing weeks of terror and humiliation and anger. I cried for 2 hours straight. Then I fell asleep. Marcus called the next morning. We've got him. I sat up in bed, instantly alert. Brandon? Carlos Ruiz broke. We brought him in for questioning again yesterday with evidence of a $25,000 cash payment he couldn't explain. He confessed everything. What did he say? Brandon contacted him through an online forum, offered him $30,000 to play a very specific role, pick you up from the Hilton on March 23rd, drive you to the airport. At exactly 6:35 a.m., call in an anonymous tip about drug trafficking, lock the doors, keep you in the car until police arrived. Oh my God. Carlos says he didn't know you were being framed. Brandon told him you were a drug dealer and that police needed help catching you in the act. Made it sound like Carlos was helping law enforcement. But he knew something was wrong, I said. He told me to trust him. He said I'd understand in 5 minutes. According to Carlos, he started having doubts when he saw your reaction. You seemed genuinely confused and terrified, not like someone who knew they had drugs in their luggage. He realized he might have been lied to, but by then, it was too late. Is he being charged? Yes. Conspiracy, evidence tampering, accepting payment for illegal activity. He'll probably get 18 months to 2 years. And Brandon? We arrested him this morning. He's being charged with conspiracy to traffic narcotics, evidence tampering, witness tampering, and a half-dozen other federal crimes. He's looking at 15 to 20 years if convicted. 15 to 20 years. Brandon would spend more time in prison than I'd spent in jail. It should have felt like justice, but all I felt was tired. What happens to my case now? I asked. With both Maria's and Carlos's confessions directly implicating Brandon, and with no evidence that you had any knowledge of the drugs, I'm filing another motion to dismiss. This time, I think it'll work. When? Hearing is scheduled for May 1st, 2 weeks from now. 2 more weeks of uncertainty. 2 more weeks of having federal charges hanging over my head. But at least I wasn't in jail anymore. Brandon's arrest made national news. Pharmaceutical sales rep frames colleague with fentanyl to win promotion. The story had everything media loved: corporate competition, drugs, an elaborate conspiracy, an innocent woman nearly destroyed. My phone started ringing constantly, reporters wanting interviews, true crime podcasts wanting me on as a guest, even a few literary agents asking if I'd consider writing a book about my experience. I ignored all of it. I just wanted it to be over. Brandon's lawyer tried to negotiate a plea deal, claimed Brandon had only meant to get me fired, not arrested, that planting the drugs was supposed to just delay my flight, cause a scene, make me look unprofessional to the company. But 20 kilograms of fentanyl isn't a prank. It's a federal crime, and the DEA wasn't interested in deal-making. Brandon was going to trial. And so, technically, was I, unless the judge dismissed my charges. The dismissal hearing on May 1st lasted less than 30 minutes. Marcus presented everything: Maria's confession, Carlos's confession, the financial trail leading to Brandon, the complete lack of evidence that I'd had any knowledge of the drugs. The prosecutor barely argued. Even she could see the case had fallen apart. The judge looked at me over his glasses. "Ms. Morgan, based on the evidence presented, I find that you had no knowledge of the controlled substances found in your luggage. The charges against you are dismissed. You're free to go." Just like that. 6 weeks of my life in jail, another 3 weeks on bail, living in fear. All of it erased with a single sentence from a judge. Except it wasn't really erased, because everyone still knew I'd been arrested. Everyone still associated my name with drug trafficking. Everyone still had doubts. "Congratulations," Marcus said outside the courthouse. "You're officially exonerated." "Thank you," I said, "for everything. I know my parents spent their retirement savings on your fees. I'll pay them back. Somehow. Focus on rebuilding your life first. The money will work itself out. But how do you rebuild a life that's been completely destroyed? MedTech Solutions officially fired me the week after the charges were dismissed. Not because I'd been arrested. They couldn't legally fire me for that since I'd been exonerated. But they found other reasons: performance issues, failure to meet company standards, generic HR language that meant, "We don't want someone associated with a drug trafficking scandal working here." I didn't fight it, didn't have the energy, just signed the severance papers and walked away from 6 years of building a career. The promotion I'd been competing for? They gave it to someone else. Not Brandon, obviously. He was in jail awaiting trial. But not me either. They brought in an external candidate. I filed a civil lawsuit against Brandon, sued him for $800,000, emotional distress, lost wages, damage to reputation, legal fees. His lawyer argued he had no assets to pay a judgment. Every penny had gone to gambling debts. His family had cut him off financially after the arrest. The court ruled in my favor anyway, awarded me the full amount, But Brandon had nothing to give. I'd collected maybe $12,000 total from the sale of his car and garnishment of his future prison wages. I'd probably never see the rest. Justice, it turned out, wasn't very satisfying when the person who destroyed your life had nothing left to take. Finding a new job was impossible. Every pharmaceutical company I applied to Googled my name, found the arrest, found drug trafficking and fentanyl and LAX. They didn't see charges dismissed, or framed by coworker, or completely innocent. They just saw risk, someone who'd bring negative attention, someone whose past would reflect badly on their company. I applied to 37 jobs over 2 months, got 1 interview, didn't get the job. Eventually, I took a position as a pharmacy cashier at a CVS near my parents' house. $15 an hour, no benefits. Scanning prescriptions and ringing up customers buying toothpaste and cold medicine. 6 years of sales experience and a college degree, and I was making barely above minimum wage. My coworkers were mostly college kids and retirees. Nice people. They knew nothing about my past. I didn't tell them. I just showed up, did my job, went home. Day after day, trying to figure out who I was supposed to be now. The panic attacks started in June. I'd be at work, ringing up a customer, and suddenly I couldn't breathe. My vision would narrow, my heart would race. I'd have to excuse myself and hide in the bathroom until it passed. At first, I thought I was having a heart attack, but Amy, the nurse, recognized it immediately. "You have PTSD, Jess. You need to see someone." I started therapy twice a week with Dr. Patricia Morrison. She specialized in trauma and wrongful imprisonment. "What you went through was profoundly violating," Dr. Morrison told me during our first session. "You were stripped of your autonomy, your freedom, your sense of safety in the world. That kind of trauma doesn't just disappear when the charges are dismissed." "I should be grateful," I said. "I should be happy I'm not in prison, but I just feel empty, like everything that made me who I was got taken away." "Because it did," Dr. Morrison said gently. "Your career, your reputation, your sense of control, those were all taken from you by someone else's choices. You're grieving those losses. That's completely normal." I started taking medication for anxiety and depression, started doing the work of trying to heal. But healing isn't linear. Some days I felt almost okay. Other days I couldn't get out of bed. Brandon's trial happened in August. I didn't attend most of it, couldn't bear to sit in a courtroom and relive everything again. But I did go to the sentencing hearing. Needed to see it end. Needed to know he'd face consequences. The judge gave him 15 years in federal prison, no possibility of parole for at least 10 years. Brandon stood there in his orange jumpsuit, hands cuffed, and cried, begged for leniency, said he'd made a terrible mistake, said he never meant to hurt anyone so badly. But he had hurt me, badly, irreparably. The judge wasn't swayed. "Mr. Chen, you deliberately framed an innocent woman for a serious federal crime. You paid multiple people to participate in your conspiracy. You showed no regard for the catastrophic impact your actions would have on Ms. Morgan's life. The sentence is 15 years. The gavel came down. I should have felt vindicated, but I just felt tired. Maria Gonzalez got 3 years for her role. Carlos Ruiz got 18 months. Both of them wrote me letters apologizing. I didn't respond to Maria's, but Carlos's letter said he wanted to apologize in person. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet him. We met at a coffee shop in downtown Chicago in September, 6 months after that terrible morning at LAX. Carlos looked older than I remembered, gray at his temples, deep lines around his eyes. "Thank you for meeting me," he said immediately. "I know you have no reason to, but I needed to say this in person. I'm so sorry for what I did to you." "You locked me in your car," I said flatly. "You delivered me to police knowing I'd be arrested." "I thought you were guilty," Carlos said quietly. "The man who hired me showed me photos, a dossier, made it seem official, said you were part of a drug ring and police needed help catching you. I thought I thought I was doing the right thing. You thought $30,000 was worth betraying a stranger? I needed the money. My mother had cancer. The medical bills were destroying my family. When this man offered me $30,000 to help catch a drug dealer, I convinced myself it was okay, that I was helping. Did you give the money back? Yes. When I realized what had really happened, I gave it all back to the DEA, and I pled guilty. I'm serving my sentence. I know none of that fixes what I did to you. I looked at this man who'd played a part in destroying my life. He wasn't a villain. He was just desperate. Just like Maria had been desperate for $20,000. Just like Brandon had been desperate to escape his gambling debts. Desperation makes people do terrible things. And I was the one who'd paid the price for all their desperation. I don't forgive you, I said. Maybe someday, but not now. I understand. Carlos stood to leave. I just wanted you to know I'm sorry, and that I hope you can rebuild your life. After he left, I sat in that coffee shop for a long time, thinking about how many people had made choices that destroyed me. Brandon, Maria, Carlos, even the DEA agents who'd assumed I was guilty, the judge who'd denied bail, the company that fired me. Everyone made choices based on what served their own interests, and I was the collateral damage. It's been 3 months since Brandon's sentencing, 3 months since the legal part of this nightmare finally ended. I'm still working at CVS, still living with my parents, still in therapy twice a week, still taking medication to get through each day. I'm 34 years old. I should be a senior account manager making 6 figures. Instead, I'm a cashier making $15 an hour. I should be traveling for work, closing major deals, building a career. Instead, I'm scared to go to airports, scared to get in taxis, scared to trust anyone or anything. Brandon took more than 6 weeks of my freedom. He took my career, my financial stability, my sense of safety in the world. He took the person I used to be and left someone broken in her place. And even though he's in prison for 15 years, even though Maria and Carlos are serving their sentences too, it doesn't feel like justice. Because justice would mean getting my life back, getting my career back, getting back the person I was before that taxi ride. But that person is gone. I can never be her again. People ask me sometimes how I'm doing, if I'm okay, if I've moved on. And I don't know how to answer, because what does okay even mean after something like this? I'm alive. I'm not in prison. The charges were dismissed. By any objective measure, I should be grateful. But I'm not okay. I'm angry. I'm bitter. I'm struggling every single day to figure out how to exist in a world that proved it could destroy me in an instant for no reason at all. I did everything right. I worked hard. I played by the rules. I was a good person living an honest life, and none of that protected me. Someone wanted something I had, and instead of accepting defeat, they chose to destroy me completely. If this story teaches you anything, it's this. Your life can be upended in an instant, by strangers, for reasons you'll never see coming. Trust your instincts, yes. Be careful, yes. But also understand that sometimes no amount of caution is enough. Sometimes you're just in someone else's way, and they'll remove you. Simple as that. The system eventually figured out I was innocent, but it took 6 weeks in jail and 3 months of legal hell. 6 weeks that destroyed my reputation. 3 months that cost me my career. Justice, when it finally came, was too little, too late. My name is Jessica Morgan. I'm 34 years old. I work as a cashier at CVS in Naperville, Illinois. 3 months ago, I was a pharmaceutical sales representative with a promising career. I was making $85,000 a year. I had a future. And then a taxi driver locked his doors at LAX and told me to trust him. And my entire world collapsed. I was framed. I was innocent, and it didn't matter. Because once you're arrested, once your mugshot is online, once people Google your name and see drug trafficking, you're guilty in their eyes forever. Even after charges are dismissed, even after the real criminal is convicted, even after everyone knows you were set up, you're still the person who was arrested, and that's all anyone remembers. So please, if you take nothing else from my story, take this. Document everything. Trust carefully. And if you ever find yourself in a situation like mine, get the best lawyer you can afford immediately. Because the system doesn't protect the innocent. It protects the guilty until someone proves otherwise. And sometimes, by the time that proof comes, it's already too late. If this story showed you how easily an innocent person's life can be destroyed, hit that like button right now. Subscribe to this channel for more real stories about false accusations, betrayal, and fighting for justice. Drop a comment below. Tell me your name and where you're from. Have you ever been wrongly accused? How did you fight back? Share this with someone who thinks the system always protects innocent people. Someone who needs to understand how quickly everything can fall apart. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.